in this unique situation, no one wants to fucking talk about either of the real reasons as to why this is taking place. Bunch of psychos in this chat supporting terrorist Hassan. Ugh. Everyone and their mothers have basically come to the recognition that we have been at, which is the reason why people call me a terrorist, that what Israel is doing is unconscionable. And there are still people who come in here tirelessly day after day as Israel continues starving children to be like, dude, you're a terrorist. And you have people who support terrorism. No one here supports Israel. Okay? Israel is the real terrorist in this equation. It's very odd that you guys still try to do this when public opinion on this has changed so much. Like, if you were to maybe go outside for a brief moment and have a conversation with another human being, you would realize that you are actually in the minority here. Okay? It's so strange to keep holding on to this notion that, like, and many of those guys will turn around and still be like, well, you know, Israel's doing wrong stuff, but you're still a terrorist. It's like, no one believes this. No one agrees with you. The only people that agree with you are like in Discord servers that you frequent. Please go outside. Okay, please.
Wolf, you saw that after the suspect shot several individuals, he came in contact with a woman who was leaving the elevator, and he allowed her to walk past him without any action at all. And he just shot one of the security guards who was behind the desk. And so that is going to be part of the investigation and the interviews that will follow.
Was the suspect's concealed firearms permit that was issued in Nevada back in 2022 still active? And what do we know about the permit or any of the gun purchases?
We're looking into that. That is why our team is going to Las Vegas to do a thorough investigation into the firearms to find out were they legally possessed and were they on his permit and was he allowed to follow. But that is part of the ongoing investigation that our detectives are going to carry out in Las Vegas.
As you know, President Trump issued a statement earlier this morning from Scotland saying he's been briefed on the shooting and he expressed his condolences. Have you actually, Mayor, spoken to the president since last night's shooting? And if so, what did he have to say?
No, I have not. And we thank him for his kind words for all of the victims and for our slain officer. I have communicated with our federal authorities, and our teams are doing the same. They are assisting us as we move forward in this investigation.
Finally, Mayor, I know you spoke with police officer Didarul Islam's family, the New York police officer who was killed. You are a former police officer yourself, so what's your message to his family and the family of the other victims?
A painful moments, and everyone who puts on a uniform, we do it with the full understanding that we're going to run towards danger as others will run away. And this was his dad's only son. And, you know, as a father with one child and a son, I could only imagine how painful it is. And I shared that with him and his family, and we thanked them for their service. This is a fine family. This was a fine young man that believed in faith, believed in fatherhood, and believed in protecting the city of New York.
And as I said, our deepest condolences to his family. May he rest in peace, and may his memory be a blessing. Mayor Eric Adams of New York, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah. This is, I mean, we know how this happens. It's the only country where it happens so frequently. No other country has this kind of issue. Or when it happens one time in another country, they very quickly solve it. It's not a natural disaster. It is completely avoidable. It's completely preventable. It's a matter of political will. It's a matter of the government taking the correct action in this case, which they never will. What else is there to say? I will say this much. Zohran Mamdani had a tweet about this. He said, "I'm heartbroken to learn of the horrific shooting in Midtown, and I'm holding the victims, their families, and the NYPD officer in critical condition in my thoughts. Grateful for all of our first responders on the ground." And Edward Isaac Dover, who is supposed to be an unbiased CNN reporter, had this to say. Remember, as I've said, Edward Isaac Dover is like the number one anti-Bernie guy. He's an absolute psychopath. Here's what he said. As the casualties of the shooting are assessed, including the Bangladeshi immigrant who was the off-duty officer killed while working security, the only statement from the New York City Dem mayoral nominee remains this tweet, sent while he is still in Uganda for wedding celebrations. He is such a bad faith hatchet man. He's such a piece of shit. Yeah. He is such a fucking bad faith piece of shit. That's why I said, I remember his name. He's always been a bad faith hack. It's also crazy because Zohran is not the mayor currently. He's not the mayor currently. Eric Adams is. On February 24th, Smith said in a group message to the rest of the crisis team, just talked to Edward Isaac Dover at The Atlantic. He's very hard on our side on this. When asked for clarification, Smith replied, total mind meld. He says he could be convinced to write something on Andrew because he thinks this whole thing is bullshit. Dover, who now also works at CNN, did indeed write something for The Atlantic on Cuomo, which took the shape of the unfortunately titled story of course, Andrew Cuomo isn't going to resign. He was a massive, massive anti-Bernie guy. He's always been a hatchet man for the DNC. He despises anyone to the left of Nancy Pelosi, basically. And here he is biting off more than he can chew once again. He will just perpetually be on the wrong side of every issue because he is ideologically bound to the DNC position, like the centrist liberal position. Anyway, we got some updates on Trump as well. There is also, speaking of Zohran, there's a new New York City mayoral general election poll from Zenith Polls and Public Progress. The most comprehensive poll of the race finds Mamdani with a commanding 28-point lead in a five-way race and getting over 50% head-to-head versus Cuomo. This is from Adam Carlson, who blocked me a long time ago, but I think he's been pretty good on this stuff. Here are some top line from the stats. 85% of young men support Zohran Mamdani. 75% of young women support Zohran Mamdani. 67% of Jewish people aged 18 to 44 support Zohran Mamdani. 65% of black people aged 18 to 44 support Zohran Mamdani. Would you have guessed any of that with how the media has covered all of this? Obviously, no poll is perfect, and you shouldn't get comfortable. But my point is, Zohran Mamdani is doing a lot better than the way the media has covered him. Post-primary poll data by Data for Progress suggests Mamdani's criticism of Israel and support for Palestinians attracted voters. Who could have told you that? Who kept repeating this over and over again? Yes, I'm going to do Crystal Ball's Slotkin interview as well, where she destroys Elisa Slotkin. 78% of Dem voters agreed with Mamdani's belief that Israel was committing a genocide in Gaza, and 63% back his pledge to arrest Netanyahu. Yeah. 60% of Dems are more likely to support a candidate who doesn't visit Israel. Mamdani drew fire from his rivals for saying he wouldn't want to travel to Israel as mayor. According to the poll, 60% of Democratic Party voters, primary voters, said they are more likely to support a candidate who declines to visit Israel by citing the need to focus on local issues. I kept repeating this over and over again throughout the election, throughout the past election. This didn't happen overnight. This kind of enmity did not come across overnight. Seems increasingly obvious that Gaza is going to be the defining wedge issue in the 2028 Dem primary. Holy Toledo. Here is Harry Enton talking about it as well. There's more information coming out on this as well because Israel's starvation campaign is continuing. 2/3 or more of the New York City Democrat primary voters agree with Zohran Mamdani's position on Israel, including arresting Bibi. 57% say they might oppose Dems who don't endorse Mamdani for mayor. That includes party's 2 Brooklyn-based leaders in Congress. This is something that they are incredibly fearful of. It is not Zohran Mamdani's failure that people are fearful of. Democrats are worried that he will succeed. Democrats are worried that he has succeeded because when he succeeds, people are emboldened. Okay? When he succeeds, people go, hold up. We can demand more from our politicians. Why aren't you like him? It turns out there are people who can just say fuck Israel and like still win. And I say fuck Israel. I think it's fuck Israel o'clock. Why aren't you saying it? That's it. Here's the new Gallup poll on this as well. American support for Israel's military campaign against Hamas is called to a new low, 32%. Still, 71% of Republicans approve Israel's actions in Gaza. Just 8% of Democrats back the Israeli government's war plans. %. And by the way, remember, Democrats were already at 18% in January. Okay? Only 18% of Democrats were in favor of Israel's actions in Gaza in January of 2024. This was always an incredibly partisan problem. The very fact that our Democrats our politicians did not actually respond to this major issue of crisis, major conflict, major moral problem is ridiculous. Who was out here? New polling commissioned by Semaphore shows how the anti-Israel craze has remade the Democrat Party. 78% of Democratic primary voters in New York City believe that Israel is committing a genocide in Gaza. Democrats are going to have to start deciding if they'd rather avoid criticism for AIPAC or win elections. I want you to understand something. This is why I kept saying over and over again that this was a non-starter even in the election cycle. This did not change overnight. Make no mistake, the very same problems, the very same attitude that people are now coming to recognize existed already within the Democratic Party's base of support. This is why I kept saying over and over again that Kamala Harris avoiding this issue is idiotic. Okay? Remember that. This is why I kept repeating over and over again that you can't just simply say, oh, dude, Muslims need to shut the fuck up and suck it up and vote for Kamala Harris. It's like, this is a major problem. This is a major problem for the Democrats if they don't address it. And they didn't address it, and they lost the election. They were willing to throw the election away in favor of a psychopathic fascist like Donald Trump, who would seize control of every fucking facet of government and ruin what remains of the moral fabric that holds society together, specifically so they could avoid talking about Israel. As Israel kept doing is genocide. Okay? And now you have all of these prominent Democrats finally coming to that fucking conclusion. Now you have the media finally covering this issue. I cannot repeat this enough, okay? We were fucking right from the start, and they lied about it. The media lied about it. The media obfuscated the truth. The media kept repeatedly making it seem as though there was actually a base in the Democratic Party's a base of support that demanded more in terms of defending Israel, in terms of continuing Israel's genocide. That was always bullshit. That was never real. And I kept repeating over and over and over again that if they don't care about the moral calculation here, if they didn't care about the immorality of supporting a genocide, at least they could have taken a position from a totally cynical, amoral, bloodless election-focused attitude. They could have just literally faked their support for Palestinians, specifically because they want to win the election, because it is a popular winning issue. And yet on both fronts, I kept getting yelled at. I mean, look at the pod Johns now versus like the conversation that I had leading up to the election. I want to show you something here.
And I don't think Democratic candidates should take money from AIPAC or vote to fund military support for Israel anymore. Like, I really don't. In this government, absolutely not. And that especially includes, I think, the next Democratic nominee for president.
Things I want to see Democrats at least calling for is cutting off military assistance to Israel. It's a rich country, by the way. They don't need our $3 billion a year. And hands up, right? Barack Obama signed a 10-year MOU for $3.3 billion a year. Like, so you're part of the problem here. Mm-hmm. Let's correct it. I would like to see talk about sanctioning Israeli government officials who use genocidal rhetoric or who talk about ethnic cleansing openly. We should support a ceasefire resolution at the UN. We should demand that international press be allowed into the Gaza Strip to report on what's happening without an IDF minder. It's insane. The press still can't go into Gaza and cover what's happening. And I also think there has to be a total mindset change in the Democratic Party. When the war ends, we are not going back to the pre-October 7th status quo, because it's not where the party is. It's not where the world is. We're not going to shovel billions a year in military aid. We're not going to veto every effort to recognize a Palestinian state at the UN. We should not take money from AIPAC. And I will hold out hope for better political leadership in the US and in Israel. But we have to also recognize that the Biden era hug Bibi Netanyahu strategy has to be thrown.
Look, if you're a dude under the age of 30, this is when I was ringing the alarm bells offline with John Favreau before the election. Hassan Piker on Trump's bro strategy, right-wing media, and Harris's chance in the 2024 election. There's also a point that I make about Kamala and I think it's here where I talk about
politics,
Israel.
Because I think we could have an entire other conversation about the policy around Gaza. I think it continues to be catastrophic policy. I think on the genuinely trying to win every voter, you would have put a Palestinian at the DNC to come out and speak. You would have had Ruva come out and speak at the DNC and endorse Kamala Harris. You would have tried to not get into the Humphrey trap and part as best as you can, try to desperately show the American population that you're at least marginally different than Joe Biden on this issue. You wouldn't be running towards Joe Biden on this issue. That's even a more holistic problem, I think, with the Kamala Harris campaign in terms of remember, this is before the election. This is before the election. This is before the election. Every media opportunity she has nowadays, she will be like, I'm just like Joe Biden. I am Joe Biden. I love Joe Biden. I love Dick Cheney. And the only difference I have between me and Joe Biden is that I will have a Republican in my administration. I'm like, what are you doing? I get that they have completely changed their messaging strategy and their strategy on the ground to flip Republican suburb, educated small business owner, white former Republican voters, and flip them to go along with a managed, a less volatile Republican framework. That's what they're communicating. Yeah.
To those people.
I think okay. First of all,
but you're leaving a lot of people you're leaving a lot of people aside, is basically what I'm saying.
I'm going to separate the policy from the politics, because I think we could have an entire other conversation about the policy around Gaza. I think it continues to be catastrophic policy.
I think on the politics of this would have been an
So see, this is what I mean. Like, I think John here was like holding on to, no, I much love for John Favreau. Okay. The Pod Johns have always been, have always been in welcoming to my position, even challenging their positions. Right. Is policy not politics? No. Stop. Guys, we're political commentators. What he's doing is responding to what I always do. I talk about policy and then I talk about politics. These are two separate things. Calm down. Okay? He's saying that he's separating politics and policy because I started off the conversation like this. Okay? What do I always say? I say Republicans have horrible policies, but they play good politics. Okay? As in, they set up wedge issues and they really hammer it. And obviously, the legislative agenda.
Mayor, that one woman who encountered the shooter in the elevator was spared. Have you or investigators spoken to her, and how is she doing, and what did she have to say?
Yeah, it was pretty eerie when you looked at the